Film starts with a farmhouse. And at the night, a light shines all over the place. It was like some magical creature. When the farmer wakes up in the morning and discovers somebody has spoiled his farm. As a result, the landlord rags since everything occurred as a consequence of that light. The farm owner calls and instructs his 3 sons to guard the farm. Here we observe the owner's youngest son, John, who is regarded as an idol by all. His older brothers benefit from his kindness. John's brothers ask him to guard the farm alone. John agrees and prepares to guard the farm on his own. Then he hears a strange voice while sitting alone. A white horse stood behind him when he turned around. John couldn't believe what he was seeing. He now tries to grab the horse by tying a rope to it. That horse begins to run, but John maintains a firm grip on the ropes. The horse becomes unbalanced and falls into a swamp as it moves forward. John helps the horse in getting out of the swamp. Meanwhile, John realizes the horse's eyes are filled with tears. John feels terrible and promises that he will never come near this farmhouse again. The horse thanks John and departs. When John returns home, he hears a sound again from his farm. After reaching there, he gets a shock while seeing 2 horses chained. Before he can understand, a voice tells John that this is a gift for him. When John turns around, he sees a tiny horse named Foal. In fact, Foal was the son of the horse that John had saved the night before. Foal informs John that my mother is impressed by you. John, on the other hand, hears his father's voice and tries to keep him out of that place. Following his father's departure, John sits on Foal. Foal also has very good speed. Foal whistles as he reaches a point, and 2 horses come from the stable. John thinks of selling horses at the market, and after reaching the market, people get shocked by their beauty. No one has ever seen such splendid horses and many people talk about buying them. Foal also advises him to sell the horses to older man. John, on the other hand, wants to sell these horses to the king. When the king arrives, he is fascinated with the horses, but his minister believes they are stolen horses. The king takes advantage of this and takes John's 2 horses without payment. When John talks about the money, he remains silent and leaves. John is scolded by Foal, who says, "I've already told you to sell these horses to that old man." When Foal notices him sad, he whistles again, and the horses come back to him. The king's carriage tips over and he gets thrown into the flour sack. King gets angry but can't say anything because of the chamber. He asks John to set money for these horses. John sets very high price, and as a result of that king's people advises him, he should employ John for his work, because if John lived here, the king would take revenge for his insult. John accepts the king's offer and begins working for him. Now the king's assistant advises him to call a phoenix bird by John, which was a fire bird and very difficult to bring. Meanwhile, he will be able to sentence John to death. King praises his assistant's idea and tells John about it. John also gets ready, but when Foal learns of this, he warns John that it will be dangerous, because nobody has ever returned while searching for this bird. However, John had already accepted the challenge. John takes Foal with him into the forest. He shows him a dream nut and tells him that these are the fire bird's special nuts, but when eaten, cause the bird to fall asleep quickly. They reach the area where it lived. According to Foal, Firebird lives underground. They throw some nuts on the floor. When bird smells the nuts, it comes out from the ground and eats the nuts and faints shortly afterward. As John tries to capture the Firebird, it rises to its feet and begins chasing him. As he rushes to catch John and Foal, the entire island catches fire. That Firebird has captured Foal and John. John throws the last nut in front of him. When the Firebird eats that nut, he faints, and when he wakes up, he considered himself chained by them. John sees tears in his eyes, which makes him feel pretty bad for him. As a result, he frees the Firebird. The bird flies away by opening his feathers as he releases. While on his way out, he gives one of his feathers to John, which was glowing from the heat. Foal assures John that the king would not forgive him now. However, John claims that seeing this feather will convince them that they have captured the Firebird. When John goes to the king doesn't believe in anything. The next day, John was brought for the death punishment. John displays the feather, but it is no longer shining, and the king orders to kill him. As the king orders his death sentence, the Firebird appears. Everyone is shocked after seeing him, and they all believe in John. As a result, the king must withdraw his death sentence. Additionally, the king gives promotion to John. This rags the king even more, so he asks his minister to devise a new plan. After which, the minister suggests that we send John to bring a mountain princess. Firstly, John wouldn't succeed, and if he does, it is still in your favor. You could marry that princess, you have the benefit on both sides. King really likes this idea and sends John on this mission. John finally makes it to the mountains, where the princess resides. He sees that on the mountain the way of getting into the castle is made up of a thick ice layer. It was tough to break that, and in the meantime, a Firebird's feather comes. And the ice wall collapses, causing the remaining ice layer to break. A water flood comes, and Foal floats and falls in it afterward. Like a snowball, he drops down from the mountains. When John enters the castle, he notices a large number of girls. All of them were sleeping. It was extremely difficult to identify the true princess among them. However, when a Firebird feather falls near a girl, John recognizes her as the princess. When John sees that girl's beauty, he becomes astonished and informs her that his king is interested in marrying her. On the other hand, the girl claims that if your king is so powerful, he would have come to take me. Girl jumps down from the mountain. John, too, is unconcerned about his own life and jumps down after the princess. Foal saves them both and carries them down by riding them on his back. After observing John, Foal realizes that he begins to like the princess. Foal realizes that if the king finds out, it will be a problem for him. Princess was listening in on their talk secretly. She, too, thinks she's starting to like John. When they return to the king, everyone is amazed to see such a gorgeous princess. Now that he has seen John alive, King rags, but his followers asks him to understand that this is fruitful for him. Now they're promoting John, but he's not happy about it. He was worried about the princess, so he went to see her secretly. Before he can tell the princess anything, the king's people arrive and take her away. The king proposes the princess, but she sets a condition to marry him, that if he could bring the ring that belonged to her grandmother, which was lost in the sea. Following this, King grows anxious, and asks John to get ring for him. John asks Foal about the ring, but he replies he doesn't know anything about it. Foal asks about it to his mother. She informs him that the ring is in the whale's belly, which can be found near a small island in the sea. John goes with Foal, but he falls down due to a collapse with several birds around. John notices large chains in the sea, as well as a whale trapped in the chains. When John comes out, Foal informs him that the entire island is the whale. John asks who has done this to him. Foal says, "We'll have eaten some ships by accident, that's why the whale had been imprisoned by the other sailors." However, this whale now wants to correct its mistake. John is sad for the whale, and he has a plan. He believes that by helping the whale and sneezing, he will be able to get out. According to the plan, they go inside the whale's nose and tickle it. In the meantime, the whale sneezes, and all of the ships emerge from his stomach. Later on, the whale returns to the sea. Following the whale's departure, John is reminded of the ring and becomes sad. As a result of the whale's absence, a crab appears with a ring. He tells John that the whale has sent this ring for you because that whale knows about the heart's feelings. He returns to the princess and sees Firebird that the king has tied to the building. When John gives the ring, she knows that he can do anything for her. On the other hand, the king's man was peering through the microscope at Foal. He feels Foal is a devil when he listens to him speaks. They all go there to capture Foal, and the king also wakes up. When he spots him near the princess' window, he shoots Foal. John, despite his best efforts, was unable to save him. On the other hand, the king announces that John has been fired from his job as the princess's kidnapper. After a few days, he will be put to death. Meanwhile, Princess meets Foal and says him that because of her idea John has fallen into more difficulties. Before marrying, she has asked the king to shower in 3 different pots. The first pot will be filled with hot water, second with chilled water, and the third with boiled milk. She informs the king that by doing this, he will be young once more, but King doubts about it. The king's man advises him to perform a test on John first. Princess warns Foal of an idea to avoid this, that if they placed her grandmother's ring in the first pot, the firebird's feather is in the second pot, and the life and death flowers are in the third pot. Foal asks about these flowers to the princess. She claims that these flowers can only be found in the last corner of the world. This, according to Foal, will take a long time. Princess, on the other hand, claims that due to your speed, this task would be completed quickly. Despite being injured, Foal goes to get the flowers. The pots are prepared the next morning, and the king decides that this is the appropriate time to tell everyone how kind he is. He informs everyone that this process is John's second chance, and if he succeeds in this, John will be released. Later, he pushes John into the pot, and the princess places her ring secretly in the pot as well. Because of the ring, John is able to exit the first section and enter the second. The firebird, who is watching everything, begins to scream. His voice reaches the enchained feather, which flies in and falls in the pot. John eventually falls into the third and final pot. Princess was anxiously awaiting the arrival of Foal. On the other hand, we see Foal reaching the flower. Before picking the bloom, Foal realizes that whoever does so will die. Regardless, he plucks the blossom. Everyone there believes John is dead, and they begin to leave sadly. Foal appears and throws the flower in the pot. Later, John comes from the pot looking like a prince. The king, after watching this, jumps into the first pot as well. Instead of being young, he is trapped in a bubble and goes from there. Everyone is overjoyed, and they crown John as their new king. John and Princess go out in search of the Foal. Foal thinks he's going to die, but Princess assures him that the flower was simply putting him to the test. At the last scene, we see the marriage of John with Princess, and the movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.